Great job, guys. Great job. Turn your Bibles to 2 Corinthians chapter 10.
Will do.
So I love when the Spirit's working, and the last week Shada did a fantastic job with the communion, and it really helped me with my sermon. And I think once again the Spirit's been moving, and Anna did a fantastic job with her. And I promise you, I'm not like telling them what to say or anything. It's just God. It's just moving, and it really makes my job up here preaching a lot easier.
Come on.
So 2 Corinthians chapter 10. It says in verse 1, we're going to read a bit of a chunk of it, and then I'll break it down for you guys. So it says, let me know when you get there. Give me an amen. Amen. It says, by the humility and gentleness of Christ, I appeal to you. I, Paul, who am timid when face to face with you, but bold towards you when away. I beg you that when I come, I may not have to be as bold as I expect to be towards some people who think that we live by the standards of this world. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your obedience is complete. You're judging by appearances. If anyone is confident that they belong to Christ, they should consider again that we belong to Christ just as much as they do. Amen. So even if I boast somewhat freely about the authority the Lord gave us for building you up rather than tearing you down, I will not be ashamed of it. I do not want to seem to be trying to frighten you with my letters. For some say his letters are weighty and forceful, but in person he is unimpressive, and his speaking amounts to nothing. Such people should realize that what we are in our letters when we are absent, we will be in our actions when we are present. So we got to understand what's happening in this context. Why is Paul writing this letter of 2 Corinthians? So Paul established the church in Corinth, and he was there for about 2 years, and then he left to go and plant other churches. And when he left, there were problems. And there was these dialogue of letters that went back and forth between Paul and the people in Corinth. And there's about 4 letters, and we have 2 of those letters. So the Corinth sent a letter to Paul, and he said his response. We know that response as 1 Corinthians. Then they sent a 3rd letter, and he sent his 4th and final letter, which we know as 2 Corinthians. So this is the 4th letter that Paul has written in a pretty lengthy dialogue with the Corinthian church and helping them with some issues that they have. And the issue that's currently taking place is that the Corinthian church want to reject Paul. Yeah. Say, Paul, we don't need you anymore. We don't want your authority. We don't want your letters. We're done with you. And that's like not a small issue. Right?
No.
Is that, can you imagine starting a church, building it up over a course of many years, pouring out your heart, and then people are like, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks.
Yes, you will not.
Like, to give you a bit of perspective, this would be the equivalent of Michael, who came with his wife and his mission team here to build up the church. Jen was on the mission team. And then he's like, okay, awesome, London cranks, now I'm going to go plant another church somewhere else. Let's go to Germany. So he goes to Germany to start building up the church there. And then the whole church is like, you know what, Michael? We don't need you anymore.
Wow.
And the leaders are fired up about it. Me, Tommywood, Dom, Sean, we're all like, yeah, this Michael guy, we don't need him.
Wow.
That's not like a small issue. Yeah. That's like a pretty major issue.
Yeah.
But you see how Paul's attitude is. Does he look like concerned?
No.
Does he look like flustered or anxious or anything? No, they're insulting him. They're saying like, this guy Paul, he's just really big and tough because he writes letters from far away, but when he's in person, he's timid.
Wow.
And we see that Paul, he didn't really have like a super charismatic type of like presence. Is that the Bible says that he wasn't known for his public speaking. And because of this, the people, they started to look down on him. They're like, Paul, you're not that good, you're not that awesome, you're not really that strong.
Wow.
And that'd be pretty challenging if the whole church pushed up and started attacking the leader. Yeah. Just saying like, oh man, you're not that good. You're really tough when you talk from far away, but in person you're not that strong, you're not that bold. That'd be a pretty challenging situation. And Paul, how does he respond? Total confidence, total security. There isn't a hint of doubt in here. There isn't a hint of questioning whether or not he's going to be able to deal with this situation. He says it very clearly. He says in verse 3, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with, or the weapons I fight with, are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." This was a stronghold in the Corinthian church. This pride, this arrogance, this rebellion. Paul called it what it was. It was a stronghold. And he says, I have divine power, divine authority to demolish strongholds. And that's what he came to do. The title of my lesson today is Demolishing Strongholds.
Amen.
So we see that Paul, he identified this major stronghold in the Corinthian church. Yeah. And in each one of the Corinthian disciples' lives. And he wasn't worried. He wasn't concerned. He wasn't fearful. He was 100% certain that these strongholds were going to be demolished.
Yeah.
You see him. He says, okay, look. I love verse 11. It says, such people should realize that what we are in our letters when we are absent, we will be in our actions when we are present. Like, Paul was not playing games. Nope. He was ready. He's like, all right, let's go. You want to do some Bible studies? Okay, we'll do some Bible studies. Like, I am sent from God. Yeah. And that's how he saw himself, but I don't think that's how we see ourselves when it comes to taking on the strongholds in our life. So what is a stronghold, first of all, to understand? So a stronghold is defined as a fortified position that is difficult to be attacked. When I think about a stronghold, I think about in Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, there were many, many castles, and many of them still exist today. Yeah. And one of the things you could tell is that you could tell how violent an area was based on the size of the castles. The bigger the castles, the more dangerous.
Oh, wow.
Right? It makes sense. Yeah. Like, you don't need big, massive castles in a very safe, peace-loving town. No. You go to, like, some of the towns in England, you got these tiny little quaint castles. Like, oh, that's cute. You go to, like, Ireland, you see these massive fortresses. Like, okay, I see what's going on here. And I remember there's this castle up on the North Shore. Yeah. And the castle is on a cliff, right on the edge of the ocean. And you can go and you can walk around and everything, and they've got these nice little like steps and stuff that they've made now. But before there were no steps. Like, you would just have to go like down this really, really steep angled mountain or cliff face. And of course they have these like barriers that say like, do not cross past this point. And of course, what do I want to do? I want to cross past the point. I want to go further beyond. So I step over the barrier and I'm crawling, and I'm going up the side of this cliff. And I go, and it's like, it's fine, until it's not. And then I look down, and it's like a 150-foot drop into the ocean. And I was like, you know what, this probably isn't the best thing. Like, I understand why they had those barriers down. Like, I probably shouldn't be here trying to climb this. And I'm looking up, and it's this cliff, and then there's the castle. It's not like you get to the top of the cliff, and there's like somewhere where you can like stand and catch your breath. No, it's just wall. And I was thinking, I was like picturing someone that would have been assaulting this castle. Like, imagine it's like, okay, I'm attacking the castle, and I'm trying to climb this cliff, not wanting to slip and fall to my death in the ocean, while being shot at with arrows, and like boiling oil, and rocks. Like, this would not have been a fun place to try and attack. Like, I would not have volunteered for that team. Like, hey, Kolbe, go assault that stronghold over there. Like, no. Yeah. Now, how would you defeat a stronghold? A lot of times what people would try to do is they would try to like cut it off, and they would do what's called a siege. Yeah. So a siege is where you surround it and you cut off any supplies or any food from getting to the castle, and eventually the people inside, they just starve to death. Yeah. The problem with this stronghold, though, is that it was on the ocean, and it couldn't be sieged. You would have to siege it from land and from sea. And if you didn't have like a navy and an army, they could continue supplying food to this stronghold. So this stronghold was a relatively small castle, but it controlled a massive territory, because the people in this stronghold would have been completely safe. Wow. They couldn't have been attacked by anyone else. And this is what happened, is that the English, they set up these strongholds in Ireland, and even though the Irish people were way more numerous, the English had control over the country because they had these strategic points. And this is what Satan does in our life. Satan establishes these strongholds. He doesn't need all of our life. He just needs one little piece that then he can use to control the rest of our life.
Yeah, come on, Kolbe.
So in strongholds, so I think of a stronghold very, very famous in Israel. So about 200 years before Jesus, you had what was known as the Maccabean revolts. So the Maccabees were a family of Jews, and the Seleucids were the superpower of the time, and they controlled Israel. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to force the conversions of the Jews. Like, hey, no, you can't be Jewish anymore, you need to become pagan. And it continued to get worse and worse, like you can't circumcise your children, you can't teach the people the law. And then eventually it got so bad that they sacrificed a pig in the temple.
Oh.
And the Jews were like, nah, enough is enough. And this family, known as the Maccabees, they rose up and they're like, hey, we're going to go fight them. And they did. And this little tiny ragtag band of soldiers went and took on this superpower. They fought these massive battles in the Judean countryside, and they had incredible victories. And Judas Maccabee ended up leading the people into Jerusalem. They retook the palace, they retook the temple, he rededicated the temple, he took all of Jerusalem. Except, when the Seleucids were in power, they established this thing known as the Acra. The Acra, it comes from the Greek word Acropolis. And Acropolis means a fortified position at the top of a hill.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go, you're learning something new today.
Another Greece one. Oh, man. That's a funny fact.
So, what this was is that even though Judas and his family, they took the palace, they took the temple, they took Jerusalem, they took the majority of Judea, of Samaria, of Galilee, they took control of all these places. But the Seleucids, they had this stronghold of the Acra, it had a garrison of 10,000 soldiers in it. And what it meant is that the Jews were not completely free. They had to negotiate this type of like a peace deal, where they were allowed to have most of the city, they were allowed to have most of the town, they were allowed to practice their religion, they were allowed to do most of what they wanted to do, but they weren't completely free. And I think that this is what Satan will do with us in our life, is that Satan will let us conquer all of these major areas in our life. Let us be victorious. Let us take all of this territory, but he has that one stronghold to where we're forced to negotiate this type of peace deal with Satan. Where Satan will only let us live out 90% of our Christianity, but that 10% is what he's still holding on to. And the thing about the Acra is that it was a very small garrison. It was only 10,000 men. Now you have to consider that they had already fought battles against armies of over 100,000. And they've been victorious. But it was this one little stronghold that they couldn't conquer. And I think that this is the thing in our life, is that sometimes in our Christian walk, we can have incredible victories against like ridiculous odds. And we can have wonderful miracles. But there's that one little thing. One stronghold that Satan has got a firm foothold, a firm place in our hearts that won't let us go. Because the thing about the stronghold is that it couldn't really be assaulted. It was built on, the Acra was built on the highest hill in Jerusalem. So the hill was higher than the Temple Mount. And then on top of the hill was then this massive citadel, this massive fortress. And they just left it there. And they left it there. And they left it there. And they left it there. Until eventually, Judas's younger brother, Simon, says, okay, enough is enough. And what he ended up doing was, he built these massive ramps up to the side of it. So they had to build these massive like siege equipment and stuff. And he's just like, no, we are taking this thing down. And eventually he did. And they went in there and they killed the garrison. But then he was like, okay, no. We're not just going to kill the garrison. We're going to dismantle this thing brick by brick. And he took apart the whole fortress. But then he said, no, we're not even done there yet. We're going to level the hill so that no one can ever build a fortress again on this hill. We're going to make this hill down to the ground, and we're not going to have anything higher than the Temple Mounts.
Wow.
Wow.
That's what it took to demolish the stronghold.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason why we have these strongholds in our life is that we don't want to put in the work,
Preach.
right? That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You got to build the siege equipment, you got to fight the enemies, and then you got to take apart the fortress brick by brick. Then you got to level the mountain.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of work that most people just don't want to do. They're content with living 90% of their Christianity.
Wow. Yeah.
I think about the Americans fighting the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So in 2003, the American army went and invaded Afghanistan. And they were super successful. And they took Kabul, the capital. And they took all of the other major cities. And they took pretty much everything, except for the tribal lands in the mountains. The reason why is that the Taliban had strongholds in the mountains. And what happened is that the Americans, they have massive technological advances. They've got an air force, they've got bombers, they've got tanks, they've got predator drones, they've got all these things. So they just come and they just carpet bomb, bring in their tanks, they just steamroll over the enemy. But the problem is that doesn't work in caves. That's why the Taliban, they just hit in caves. And they just, the artillery, pew, the bombs, pew, all these things are going off. And they just wait it out. And I think that's what Satan does in our life, is that Satan will just hide in his little stronghold. While you come to church, while you go to midweek, while you're in that Bible study, he'll just be hiding out while the bombs and everything, the spiritual victories are taking place, but he's just waiting for that opportune time. Like, okay, wait, all the artillery done? All right, time to get to work.
Wow.
And that's what the Taliban did.
Yeah.
They waited for months and for years until eventually America just was like, all right, we're just going to be done bombing there. And then they're all right, now it's time to go take back those villages that we lost.
Wow.
And now it's 16 years into the war on terror, and America is they're pledging to leave in the next 2 years. And the Taliban has taken back the majority of land that they lost in 2003
Wow.
because of these strongholds that were never fully dealt with.
Wow.
Because what America didn't want to do is they didn't want to fight cave by cave. They didn't want to go in because it would have been extremely costly. It would have had a very high cost of life to be able to go in there because you can't take planes in there. You can't take tanks in there. And the Taliban knew it. And America just didn't want to pay the price.
Wow.
They wanted to cut corners. And they developed this thing called the Moab. So it's short for Mother of All Bombs.
Oh gosh.
So the Moab, it's a 9-meter long bomb that weighs 10,000 kilos and has the equivalent power of 11 tons of dynamite. So it's the most powerful non-nuclear weapon ever used. And so what America did was they're like, yeah, we got this awesome bomb, we're going to blow up the Taliban and everything. So they went and they put this bomb on their bomber. They flew over the Taliban's base, they dropped the bomb. You can go on BBC and you can watch this massive fireball that goes and just destroys it. And they're like, yeah, it's awesome. We killed 94 Taliban. Yeah. And they dropped it on this like super intricate like cave network. Like, have you ever seen like ants and their little ant nests? They had these caves. The Taliban do the same thing. They tunnel out in the mountain where they'll be completely safe. And they dropped this bomb that killed the Taliban, but didn't destroy the caves. Didn't actually destroy the stronghold.
Wow.
And I think that what can happen in our life is that we can go and fight the battles and drive out the demons out of our life, but we don't actually take apart the stronghold. So they come back.
Wow.
Right? Okay, can you imagine how discouraging it would be? You go, you fight a battle, you clear out all the enemies, then you leave it, and then they just come back.
Yeah.
And you have to fight the battle again, and again, and again. And this is why America's losing. America, the most powerful military in the world, cannot defeat a bunch of farmers. That's shepherds. They're goat herders
Wow.
with broken guns and missing teeth. And they like that's who these people are. Like these aren't like the super terrorists of the world. They're just people that are just camping out in these strongholds, just
Wow.
waiting. And so this is the thing for us. Let's take this about for ourselves. We can have temporary victories in our life. But if we don't actually put in the work to destroy the strongholds, Satan will just come back. And then we'll have to fight the battle all over again. And then if we don't do it, then he'll come back again. And we'll have to fight the battle all over again. And it'll get to be a point, just like the Americans, where you just get tired of fighting the battle. Just like, okay, you know what? Fine, you can just keep this territory, Satan.
Wow.
I just don't need that part of my heart, I guess.
Wow.
But that's not what the Maccabees did. They wanted total freedom. And they understood that to have that, they had to demolish the strongholds. I think about this for myself. Okay, let's get practical. So, strongholds in my life. What are some strongholds that I can think of? Well, the first stronghold, without a doubt, was sexual impurity. Is that really from the age of puberty onwards, I was completely enslaved to pornography, masturbation, lust, impurity. And even when I became a Christian, I thought like, oh, that'll like magically fix it. And I'll be like, no longer struggle with these things. And I still did. And I still struggled. And I still had a problem. Because Satan had a stronghold in my life. And I just remember sitting just completely in despair, feeling like I'll just never be able to overcome this.
Wow.
I would just struggle with this like all my life. And I think that's how some people think sometimes. You have that stronghold, you have that one thing that Satan has got such a tight grip on that you feel like you will just never be set free from. And the truth is that you will never be set free from it if you think like that. Strongholds don't just disappear by themselves. Like you don't just have like a strong gust of wind that like knocks it over, or a really big rainstorm that eventually wears it down. No, they will stay there forever until you remove it.
Wow.
And this battle of sexual impurity was gonna just stay there forever until I moved it. And I remember just getting so indignant. I just had the godly sorrow that I was just like, enough is enough. And I remember just coming to a point where I was like, you know what, I just don't want to look at pornography anymore. I just don't have that desire anymore. And I'm not to say that I never struggle with lust or anything like that. Like, you still battle the sin, you still struggle,
Right.
but it doesn't have the stronghold like it did in my life.
Yeah.
Like I used to be, this doesn't give you an idea of how bad, I could not be left alone for any period of time without looking at pornography. That's how addicted I was. I remember when I went to university, I stayed with the family, and this was before like smartphones were mainstream, and so I didn't have a smartphone or anything like that, and so to go online you had to use a computer, and their computer was in their living room. And I, in the middle of the day, would look at pornography in their computer, in their living room, while people are walking in and out of the living room. I would just tilt the screen to where they couldn't see it from the angle that they were coming in the door at. Like, that's how depraved I was. And I just felt like I'm never going to be set free from this. But I get to a point where I was like, okay, enough is enough. I choose to repent. I choose to demolish the strongholds. And I did.
Come on, Kolbe.
And that was a massive victory in my life. I remember being so encouraged when I was able to finally live a life of purity. And it's been incredible. It's been over 3 years now since the last time I looked at pornography.
Come on, Kolbe.
And I never thought that was so then I had that incredible victory with my purity. That was incredible. And then I had another stronghold that was even greater than my impurity, was my insecurity.
Oh, la, la.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly how I felt. I remember going in the end of 2015 to Los Angeles. And I was going to start dating Rebecca. And I was going to start training for the ministry. And I got introduced at the staff meeting there. Now, to give you perspective, their staff meeting is 120 people. So it's like the size of our church. And I stand up, and there's, oh, this is Kolbe. He's from London. He's going to train for the ministry. It's going to be incredible. And he's here as Rebecca Rico's boyfriend. And I was like, what? Say what? And I told the leader of the church afterwards, I was like joking. I was like, hey, so like, you know how you said that like, I'm Rebecca's boyfriend? I mean, really, she's more like my girlfriend. And the guy, he just looked at me. He's like, nah, bro, you're her boyfriend. That's how it is right now. It's like, because people know her, they don't know you. Like, who are you? And I was so angry. I was so insecure because I was like, oh, people don't know what I'm like, and people think that I'm not cool, but really I'm cool. And I had no idea what a stronghold this insecurity had on me. That really was so obsessed with what my girlfriend thought of me, was so obsessed with what other people thought of me. And I remember it was her birthday. This was about 6 months later. And my car broke down. The brakes seized up on my car, and I wasn't going to be able to make it. It was an hour and a half journey there, and it was about 2 hours before the party was supposed to start. So I called up my friend Sean. I was like, hey Sean, you want to go with me to the IE? Now, this is like the equivalent of calling up someone and be like, hey, you want to go to Birmingham, like right now? And he's like, oh, bro, I don't know, and stuff. And I was like, bro, Crystal's going to be there. And Crystal was the girl that he liked. And so he's like, all right, let me get a shower. I'll be right there. And it's awesome because now they're married and stuff. They're actually coming to the EMC, so it'll be great. You can hear his side of the story about this because he definitely will remember this, what happened. So we go and we're traveling and we're like fired up. I'm gonna see Rebecca, he's gonna see Crystal. And we show up for her party, and it's a birthday party. There's a massive table and Rebecca's in the middle. And I'm looking for a seat next to Rebecca, because I mean, like, I'm her boyfriend, so like, we only saw each other on the weekends and stuff. And the seats next to Rebecca were taken. I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked, and the seat opposite Rebecca, and I was like, oh, okay, I want to sit next to her. I'll sit opposite her. Okay, I guess that's how we're doing it this way. And so the seat opposite Rebecca was also taken. So I had to sit like further down the table where I had to like look this way to like Rebecca over there. And I was just like livid. I was so upset because like, oh, I'm her boyfriend and people are gonna think like I just showed up here and then like really like worked up in a frenzy about how it would be perceived, the fact that I didn't sit next to Rebecca. And so afterwards I was like, hey, like Rebecca, since we didn't really have like a date, like why don't you go out for coffee? And she was like not interested in coffee at all. She wasn't really interested in dating me at that time. And so we went out for coffee, and like Sean and Crystal were like so fired up. They were like all goo-goo-eyed about each other. So what music do you like? Oh, I like this music. Oh. And me and Rebecca were just like watching like paint dry on the wall. And so then we left, and it was terrible. It was like one of the worst nights ever. And Sean was fired. Thank you. And so we had an hour and a half drive home where he was like talking about how like fired up he was about Crystal and stuff. And I was talking about how not fired up I was about Rebecca and how terrible it was. And then we get back to my car, and we had to call a tow truck to pick up my car. And we got home at 11, and it took us 3 hours to get the tow truck to come and pick up my car. So we're sitting there, and it was raining, and it never rains in LA.
Right.
It's raining, so we're just sitting listening to the rain. So I put my seat back, and I'm just laying there. And Sean's like, Kolbe, you right over there, bro? No. 10 minutes of silence.
Wow.
And it's like, you want to like talk about it at all? Like, no. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, it's like, I mean, sometimes it's helpful to just like talk about it instead of sitting here in silence. And I just ignored him. So we literally sat there. This guy, he's just a champion. Like, he sat with me for 3 hours in silence, listening to the rain, because I was so angry. I was so bitter. I was so worked up because of my insecurity.
Wow.
I had such a stronghold that ruined my week. Because I was so worked up. I had such a stronghold in my life that was holding me back. And I remember this was at the end of our time in Los Angeles, then we moved to London, and it didn't go away. Like I still continued being insecure for another at least 6 months. Odd. And I remember just things were not moving forward. We weren't being fruitful. Things weren't happening because I had this massive stronghold in my life. And I remember it to the day. It was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2017. And I was staying with the brother's household. There was another brother who was dating. And he went out and his girlfriend had made this like breakfast and like everything was heart-shaped. It was like heart-shaped strawberries and heart-shaped pancakes and heart-shaped sausages and heart-shaped like, I don't even know what else. Everything was heart. And it was like this heart-shaped card with all that love. And he comes in like he's back from like a hunt or something, like showing off his trophy. He's like, hey bro, look what I just got. Like, yeah, good for you. And I was like, all right, I just need to have a quiet time. And so I went, I remember studying out, I was studying out in Leviticus, looking at like ritual uncleanliness and connecting it with the bleeding woman. And I remember studying out, it was the first time, I kind of understood it, like I understood the bleeding woman, she was like sick and she needed help from Jesus and Jesus helped her. But this day, I remember studying it out in depth and really getting to understand that everyone she touched would have been defiled. So as she went through this crowd, everyone she bumped into or everything, they would have been ritually unclean and they would have been ticked off at her, even though she didn't do anything wrong.
Wow.
Other people would have been so angry at her, but she didn't care. She just wanted to be with God. She wanted to have Jesus in her life.
Wow.
And I just had this like epiphany. It was literally like this simple. It was just like, oh my gosh, I don't care what Rebecca thinks anymore. I don't care what other people think anymore. Like I only care what God thinks. It was like, it doesn't matter if people don't like me. As long as God likes me, I'm okay. Amen. It doesn't matter if Rebecca like isn't fired up about me. Like it does. As long as God's fired up about me, as long as I'm righteous, that's all that matters. And it was just like these shackles around like my neck and my shoulders and my legs and everything were just like loose. And I was like, today's gonna be a great day. And I just remember praying. I was like, God, like, I don't care. If Rebecca does something awesome for me, great. If she doesn't, great. Like I'm not gonna let my joy be affected by her or by anyone else. And it was a Tuesday, we were going to go to staff, and so this was when I was living in the East next to Ola and Denise, and so I came out to meet Rebecca, we were going to travel to staff together, and sure enough, what does she have? She has this picture of the two of us, and it's like, everything I love about you from A to Z, and it's all wonderful, and nice and hard. And I was like, amen, God, that's great. But I'm not going to get fired up because I got that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, my security is in you. And it was crazy because when we got to staff, Rebecca, she went over, she was talking with Michelle. And I could see that there was like stuff going. And Michelle, she like makes a beeline for me. She's like, hey bro, so I think you should propose to Rebecca. I was like, well, sis, I mean, like, I'm not the one with my foot on the brake or anything. and she says, oh no, like, no, Rebecca's ready. Like, really? How do you know? Oh, she told me, just now, right now. Yeah, she wants to. Like, amen, sis, I'm surrendered, whatever the Lord's will is. And I genuinely meant that. I wasn't trying to be cheeky or anything like that. Like, I genuinely meant that. It was the very day that I was able to overcome this stronghold and completely demolish it was the day that God was like, okay, now it's time for you to move forward. Now it's time for you to get married. And so when I look back at these things, these are incredible victories that I can look back and it builds my faith. Is that these are things that with the impurity, I never thought I would be able to live a life of purity. I thought I was going to struggle with that my whole life. With the insecurity, I didn't know I had the struggle, and then when it came out, I thought that it was impossible. I was like, man, I'm just always going to struggle with what other people think of me. And these are great victories, but what about today? What about now? Why am I preaching about this? Because I'm still struggling, because I still have strongholds in my life. And I think that the first stronghold was big. I thought it was the biggest. It's not the biggest. The second one was even bigger than that. But I think that now, today, I am battling against my biggest stronghold ever. And that is the stronghold of laziness. Way, way bigger of a hold on my life than impurity. Way more debilitating than insecurity. This idea of laziness. And Alan was great. He was kind of like discipling me low-key beforehand. Because he wasn't meaning to, it was just God just using him. Because I normally wear my gray suit. And I went to go in and I saw that the trousers were ripped. I was like, oh no, I gotta go take those to the tailor. And so Alan was like, oh, nice suit, you look good. And so I was like, oh, thank you. And I explained to him that my trousers were ripped. He's like, oh, it's probably because you're going to the gym, right? Well, actually, no. It was just an accident. And he looks at me, and no joke. He's like, well, but like a month ago, you said that you could go to the gym. I was like, thanks for twisting that there. Yeah, you're right. A month ago, I did say I was going to go to the gym. Because here's the thing, I believe going to the gym is important.
Right.
I really understand it intellectually. I pay for a gym membership every month. But I don't go to the gym. Why? Because in my core, the core of my heart, there is a stronghold of laziness. I just don't want to do it. I just do not want to do it. And now, it's time for me to go back. Is that I'm looking up at this massive hill with a massive satanic fortress at the top. The demons are just up there laughing at me. They're just fired up. They're like, that's right, yeah, you sleep in another morning. Don't go to the gym. That's right, yeah. We're here. And you're down there. That's how it's gonna be. And I'm looking up at this fortress, I was like, okay, no more.
Come on, Kolbe.
Time for me to climb up the mountain, to take on the fortress, and to take it apart. When it comes to discipline, hard work, these types of things, I get a victory. I get a temporary victory. I nuke all of the enemies. I have a week or 2 weeks of awesome fitness and awesome work. But then I don't really deal with the fortress. I don't deal with the caves. I don't deal with all of this. So then I leave, and then Satan comes back. And then I'm discouraged because I thought I had a victory when I didn't actually have it. And I think that this is why this week has been very revealing. God has really showed that this is actually not going to be like a one and done type of preach a really cool sermon, go have a good prayer, and then you're fixed. No, this is going to be hard work.
Yeah.
If you picture taking apart a castle brick by brick, how long do you think that would take? A long time. And then after you take apart the castle, then you got to move a mountain. How long would that take? When it comes to taking apart strongholds, that's not easy fixes. It's not something you do over a fired up weekend.
Yeah.
No. You are taking on some of the biggest challenges in your life.
Yeah.
That is extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah.
But it is possible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Paul? Think about this. He's invested years of his life building up this church. And the church is like, no, we're done. And the whole church fired him. It wasn't like a civil war in the church, some people were being rebellious. No, the whole church was like, we're done with you, Paul. He's like, all right, I guess I got to go take on this stronghold. I think we go back to this text. It says in verse 3, for though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. Paul understood that this was a spiritual war. We are fighting against demonic strongholds in the lives of the disciples. These are things that will destroy people's salvation. We cannot use human effort. We cannot use worldly wisdom. It's not about, we just need to go take this course, or we just need to do this. He's like, I'm not going to show up with an army of 1,000 men that are going to come take the church by force. That's not what this is about. He says, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. This is a spiritual war that requires spiritual weapons. What are these spiritual weapons, you ask? Like, what do we actually do? Because it's great to talk about it. It's great to conceptualize, oh yeah, there's a mountain, the fortress, let's go take on the fortress. But how? What do we need to do?
Tell us, Kolbe.
Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Chapter 13.
Come on, Dave.
Come on, Kolbe, talk.
So Paul is talking about the spiritual gifts. Tongues, prophecy, healing, driving out demons. He says all these things are going to pass away. And it says in verse 13, and now these three remain. The greatest spiritual gifts, the most powerful thing we have in the world. Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. What are the spiritual weapons that we have to demolish strongholds? To take captive every thought. Faith, hope, and love.
Amen.
Wow.
That's right.
These are how we destroy these strongholds in our life. Faith. You need to have faith that God is more powerful than your sin.
Ooh, I love that.
Yep. Preach.
That God is more powerful than any scheme of Satan. Any strongholds. And when you think about it, if you think about it logically, it makes sense. If God spoke the mountains into existence, he could speak them out of existence.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't go by our heads, we go by our hearts, we go by our feelings. That these strongholds in our heart, they don't let us see things clearly. That the impurity that I had didn't allow me to see God clearly. The insecurity that I had did not allow me to see God clearly. And now even the laziness that I currently am battling prevents me from seeing God clearly. It robs me of my faith. And so, we need to have faith. And where does faith come from? The Word of God. We need to get our faith to really believe that God can help us overcome these struggles. Paul had faith.
Yes, he did.
There was no shortage of faith there. He says, hey, no, I am coming and I will do, you'll hear, my actions will be what my words are right now. Is that this is no empty threat. I'm not trying to scare you or anything. No, I am a man of God, here to preach the Word of God and to demolish all of these strongholds. That's how we need to think.
Yeah.
Hope. What is hope? Hope is a positive expectation of the future. Is that Jesus came for us to live life to the full. John 10:10. But Satan is only allowing us to live our Christian life to the part. It's only partial. He says, okay, you have all this except for the stronghold. The stronghold is mine. And this one little thing that will hold you back will keep you back from being who God wants you to be. The man, the woman that God created you to be. And what I want to help you to do is I want to help you guys to visualize who you would be without the stronghold in your life. What would your life look like if you didn't have that sin? And I think this was something that really helped me. It really helped me when I was battling with my impurity, because I wanted to be married one day. I was like, wow, I don't want this to define me for the rest of my life. I want to be a man that can be pure. I want to be able to get married one day. I want to be able to have a family one day. I believe that God has that plan for me. And this sin is preventing me from living out God's plan. So I have to have hope that I can change. I have to believe that I can be the man that God wants me to be. Same thing with the insecurity. So I believe, okay, that God did not create me to be insecure. God did not create me to be a prisoner of other people's perception of me.
Amen.
I said, no, I have to believe, I have to have hope. What would it be like if I lived a life free of inhibitions? What would my life look like if I didn't care what anyone else thought of me? If I only cared what God thought of me? I visualized that. And I was like, man, I want to be that guy. That's what I want to be. I want to be an evangelist, a man of God that fears God and no one else. That's who I wanted to be. And that's who I'm becoming now. I'm that man. Like, look, I don't care if you don't like me or not. I want God to like me. You're not going to be there on the day of judgment. He will.
Come on.
I don't answer to you. I answer to him.
Come on.
I wasn't always like that. I didn't just wake up one morning and just decide to do that. No, that was a hard battle. Brick by brick. That I had to fight. I had to dig back into my past. I had to go into the uncomfortable places to remove the fortress, remove the wall, remove the mountain that the fortress was built upon, and say, no more Satan. Not today. Not tomorrow, not ever. I'm not going back there again. You're not going to have that part of my heart anymore because I have this hope. And then lastly, love. The most powerful is love. We need to make a decision to love God more than we love ourselves. Love God more than we love our sin. Is that why do I not want to jump out of bed and go to the gym in the morning? Because I love sleeping in. I love myself. Why do I want to be lazy? Because I love being lazy. Why did I want to be impure? Because I loved impurity. Why did I want to be insecure? Because I loved insecurity. And that's the thing, is that these strongholds that you have in your life, the reason why they still exist there is that you love them. You want them to be there. You choose to allow them to stay in your hearts. The Jews would look up at the Akra every day on their way to the temple. And they're like, all right, yeah, that's fine. We'll just leave that there. We're going to go offer our sacrifices. Well, we're not free. Because we just love ourselves more than we love God. We're not ready to put in the work to remove these strongholds, to remove this pagan force, this satanic force in our city, in our home, in our life. I think this is what we got to do. Now, practically, I want to help you guys out. Practically, how do you move forward? Because it's a long-term process. This is not something that's going to be fixed by the end of this afternoon. This is something that takes time. It's persistent choices, persistently choosing to do the right thing. Is that number one, you need to repent. You need to get godly sorrow. You need to get angry, indignant. You need to see the alarm. Is that for a long time, I just didn't have a problem with laziness because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's like, I mean, it's not like I'm looking at porn or anything like that. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. So no. Laziness is just as bad as pornography. I have that conviction now. And in the same way that I hated my sin then, I hate my sin now. I'm like, okay, I have this godly sorrow now. But now, we need to be humble. Is that this stronghold was established in our life because it's an area of weakness that we have. And that if we're going to be able to overcome this weakness, we need help from God, but we also need help from one another. That I want to challenge you practically, you need to find someone that is very strong in the area that you're weak in. And get their help. I think it was awesome yesterday. I got a call from Dom in the north, and I love Dom. He's fantastic. Dom, he calls me. He's like, "Hey, bro, I just want to talk to you. Like, I just got to get open about some sin." So it gives me all this sin, and I was like, "Oh, bro, thanks for being open. I'm gonna give you all my sin." And I just told him all my sin and stuff. And he was fired up, and I was fired up. He's like, "Man, we need to talk more. This is awesome." And then I really got open. I was like, "Man, like I just feel like God's been discipling me and really exposing my laziness, exposing just my love of comfort, exposing my love of myself." And I was like, "Man, can you help me? Is that I need help with just helping me go to the gym, because he goes to the gym like every day. He cranks." And I noticed he went to the gym because on Tuesday it was a bit warmer and he was in a t-shirt, and I was like, "Man, I've got some guns." He didn't have that 3 months ago. Like it wasn't like that. No, because he's building up his fortress of righteousness and saying, no, I've got this discipline. Every day I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do this. And I just was open, I was just vulnerable with him. I said, "Man, because I asked him like a month ago for like a workout plan and stuff like that, and I never did it. And I just like, man, like, you know, we talked about going to the gym, like, I just never did it. I really hate doing this. It's just an area of weakness, like I need a lot of help." And what did he do? He's like, "Oh, bro, don't worry. Like, well, here's what I'm going to do, bro. I'm going to send you like a gym selfie, like every day. Every day when I get in the gym, I'm going to send you a picture, encourage you, and then I want you to do the same for me." Oh, okay. And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, so I want to go 5 times a week.
Come on, Kolbe.
And I want to go every day, Monday to Friday." And he's like, "That's awesome, bro. You can do it. It's going to be great." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll probably take a break on the weekends." He's like, yeah, that's good. Take a break. It'll be no problem and stuff. So what happens this morning, I get this message from Dom. He doesn't send me a picture. He sends me like 3 videos of him and Luke. Luke's on the elliptical, and they're like stretching and everything. And he's like, "Hey, bro, hope you have a great day. Have a great service." I'm like, "Dom, I told you I was going tomorrow." Like, it's Sunday. But I'm really fired up. I'm really grateful for Dom in my life because this is going to be a great chance for us he's going to help me break down this stronghold. He's going to help me, encourage me, support me, going to give me scriptures, because I need help in this area. And I think that one of the reasons practically why we don't move forward in our life is that we don't let other people in to help us. Is that we try to destroy the stronghold, we fail, we get discouraged, and we give up. Instead of, okay, let's try to do this, it doesn't work out, let's get help from someone else that knows what they're doing, and then they can help me with this. Not for today or tomorrow, for this week, no, until it's gone. Like, if I have to get Dom to send me pictures every day for the next 6 months to where I can actually build up enough character to go to the gym in the morning, that's what it takes. I think practically the last thing is that it's not about doing what you think or what I think, it's about doing what it takes. What is it going to take? Do you need to pray? Do you need to fast? Do you need to cut things out of your life? It's awesome that this on Wednesday we had Ash Wednesday, and it's always humorous for me whenever I see people walking around with like stuff on their foreheads and stuff like that. But there is a good principle of Lent. Is that hey, this is a good tradition that I want to subscribe to, and I've chosen for the next 40 days no social media, no Facebook, no YouTube, none of the social media, because this isn't helping me. This is something that's contributing to my laziness in the mornings. This is something that's contributing to not wanting to work hard. Okay, and we'll see how this goes, and maybe I'll need to cut some more stuff out, and maybe I'll need to get some more help, and maybe I'll just need to do whatever it takes. Because I think that Simon, when he just got desperate, he was just like, no, enough is enough. The thing that got him desperate was when the Seleucids tricked his brother and murdered him. And after that, he's like, all right, enough is enough. You killed my brother, I'm tearing down this fortress.
Wow.
We need to get to a point where enough is enough. I'm tired of being impure. I'm tired of being insecure. I'm tired of being lazy. I'm tired of being guilty. I'm tired of being selfish. I'm tired of being faithless. I'm tired of whatever it is. Whatever the stronghold is in your life that is holding you back from living out your Christianity to the full. Enough is enough. I want to challenge you guys. Get indignant. Get radical. Be humble. Ask for help. Get other people in your life to use these spiritual weapons with divine authority to demolish strongholds. Faith, hope, and love. The most powerful things in the world today. We have access to these things because of God. Jesus died on the cross so we could have the power of the Holy Spirit in our life, the power that raises from the dead. We can do this.
Yeah.
I don't have to be lazy anymore.
No.
You don't have to struggle with your stronghold anymore. And so guys, it's time to put this into practice.
Yeah.
It's time to learn from our brother Paul. Time to go out and to demolish the satanic strongholds in our life. I love you guys very much.
Come on, Kolbe.